I'll give you a little background. I am very American. And even had I not come to Christ, I share the founders' rather Calvinistic view of man's fallen nature, and thus would have been against Marxism, socialism, collectivism, progressivism, secular humanism, political correctness, leftism, or whatever other euphemism they use to enslave people while promising an unattainable utopia. To further that resolve, I'm also a former Marine and police officer, so I've taken an oath to defend the Republic against all enemies, foreign and domestic, several times. After taking those oaths, I came to Christ. And as is common in the Christian maturation process, I went through a growth arc, mistakenly thinking that I had a handle on truth the whole way through. Prior to becoming a real biblical Christian, most cultural Christian Americans tend to conflate their Christianity and Americanism, treating them as almost synonymous. Then, after coming to faith, we come to our "this world is not our home" stage, where we see ourselves as 100% citizens of Christ's kingdom to come, owing no allegiance whatsoever to the country and time which God intentionally placed us in. Many go beyond that otherworldly Christian aloofness, which I explained in another lesson is actually more akin to Gnosticism than Christianity, and start to see America itself as the harlot in Revelation. Thinking that they are heavenly minded, they are in reality being very ethnocentric, perceiving their own country as the center and epitome of all evil. They're like the teen who bemoans their own parents as the worst because they have no reasonable perspective of how blessed they really are and how bad their neighbors actually have it. Those of you stuck in the whole Illuminati, Bilderberger, CFR, Masons Build America phase who want to show everyone the Luciferian eye in the pyramid on our dollar, you aren't ahead of me in your education. You are actually about 2 decades behind me in your walk down the long road of truth. Been there, done that, I have the books. I'm not saying you don't have the truth about that stuff. A whole lot of what you're saying is very legit and will be a factor in what's coming. What I am saying is that you don't have the entire truth, and there is a lot more information required to complete the picture. As a unrelated or slightly related side note, I went through the same growth arc in regard to Catholicism. If you're like me, when you come to faith, you will become virulently anti-Catholic. When you are exposed to all the distortions of Scripture they fed you, it is hard not to be incredibly hostile, seeing it as the church of the Antichrist. However, the more you study church history from the 1st century to the 21st, you begin to realize that history is far more nuanced and that the church did not cease to exist between 312 and 1517. When you get the big picture, you put the destructive dogma of Rome into perspective, but put aside a 16th century eschatology, realizing that the real mortal enemies of the cross come from the left and Islam, and it would be wise to focus more on the plots of our enemies than the errors of our allies in the bigger fight. The more I study history and scripture, and the more clear it becomes that leftism is the religion of the serpent who asked, "Did God really say?" in the garden, and built a tower to challenge God in Babel. Leftism will usher in a one-world religion which glorifies man, thus represented as 666, the number of a man, in the last days. In summary, to follow my growth arc, I started out as anti-communist because I was American, and I tied my nominal cultural Christianity into that patriotism. After becoming Christian, I kind of renounced my nationalism to serve a greater eternal kingdom. But in this third phase, I now realize that while America and Christianity are by no means synonymic, they do share two common enemies seeking to destroy it. I still fight the evil of socialism, but now it is mainly because it is an enemy of the gospel, not just because it is an enemy of America. Many left-leaning Christians confuse nationalism and patriotism and think both are forbidden in Scripture. Well, they are actually wrong on both accounts because Israel was very nationalistic, but I'm not going to address that here. The difference between the two is that the nationalist is about blood and soil and defends his nation simply because it is his. Conversely, American patriots don't defend a land, a people, or a nation simply because it is theirs. They defend the ideas and principles upon which America is founded because they are good and based upon biblical principles. Patriots don't say my country right or wrong. They defend the dream of America because it is right, knowing that it will never match the kingdom to come, but it is still better than any which preceded it or exists anywhere else on earth.